Hey everybody, and welcome to the Stafford Christadelphians What We Believe series. Today we're going to be looking at human nature versus the devil. Where does sin come from? But before we start on that, if you don't know who the Christadelphians are, please check out the introductory video to this series titled Who Are the Christadelphians? Now, as we go through these beliefs, video after video, we're not going to be arguing backwards and forwards on each topic. All we're going to do is state what we believe and why we believe it. And if you want to discuss anything that's said in this video or any of the others, then please do get in touch with us via the contact form on our website. So where does sin come from then? Does it come from within us? Or is there some supernatural being tempting us, trying to make us sin against our will? So let's dive right in then to what the Christadelphians believe. Well, in simple terms, we believe that all sin, temptation and evil comes from within the human heart, but from within men and women. The main reason we take that stand, other than it seems awfully convenient to blame all our faults and failings and sins on an outside being and not really take any responsibility, is that there are a few verses in the Bible that leave absolutely no room for an external tempter. Start with Jeremiah's description of the human heart. Jeremiah 17 and verse 9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" And then our Lord Jesus Christ says to us in Matthew 15 and verses 18 to 20, "But the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart, and these things defile a person. For out of the heart come evil ideas, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are the things that defile a person." Just for context here, Jesus is talking about what makes someone unclean or clean in God's sight. The Pharisees were saying that not performing their ceremonial washing before eating made them unclean. And Jesus says this isn't the case. What Jesus says is that what you put into your mouth with your unwashed hands has no effect on your status before God. It's what comes out of your mouth and from your heart that changes your status from clean to unclean in God's eyes. And while this temptation can come either internally or externally, it never comes from a supernatural being. It comes from us, from our hearts, as we've just read. It comes from our desires and the circumstances and the people we find ourselves around. There is just no room in this statement for a devil. Jesus tells us quite clearly that all of those things, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander, come out of the heart. So we've seen that the human heart is deceitful then, and we've also seen that all of those horrible things that we mentioned come out of the heart. But where does that temptation come from? You just come with me to James chapter 1 and verse 14 and 15. It says, "But each one is tempted by his lusts." So each person is tempted by his or her lusts or desires, the things that they want, being drawn away and seduced by them, not by the devil, but being seduced and drawn away by the things that they want, they desire, their lusts. And when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it is fully formed, brings forth death. So James tells us exactly how sin comes about, and I really don't think it could be any clearer. There is no room for a supernatural devil in this process. James tells us clearly that temptation is being lured by our own desire, the things that we want. And when we act on that, that is when sin occurs. And then after sin comes death, which is the same as what it says in Romans chapter 6, where it says the wages of sin are death. So let me take you back then to the Garden of Eden, where God spent time with Adam and Eve, and there was nothing evil there. There could not have been, otherwise God would not have been there. Not even the serpent was evil. God had created all things very good, as we're told in the creation record. The serpent simply provided stimulus for a temptation that was already there. Adam and Eve both already had the desire to eat from the forbidden tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And how do we know that? Well, look at Genesis 3 and verses 4 and 5. The serpent says to the woman, "You shall not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it," that's the tree, "then your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as God, knowing good and evil." Okay, and following that immediately, what thoughts come into the woman's mind? And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that's not something the serpent mentioned. That's a thought Eve has had before. And that it was pleasing to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise. Again, not things that the serpent has mentioned. He mentioned that the tree would allow her to know good and evil. He didn't say that it would make her wise. These are desires that are already there in Eve's eyes. She has looked at God and looked at the angels and wanted to be wise, not just to know good and evil, but to be wise as they were. She had looked at that tree and thought it would be good for food. She had seen that it was pleasing to her eye. It's a desire that's already there. And it's just the same, isn't it? As when we want something that we can't have, and someone says to us, "Just take it. Doesn't matter." That temptation doesn't come from the devil, does it? It comes from whoever said it. Temptation can come externally, but it comes from circumstances and people around us, not from a devil. There is no room for a devil in the biblical version of temptation. Remember what we read in Jeremiah. The heart of man, the heart not of the devil, is deceitful. It lies and deceives above all things, and desperately sick. This is true whether we're sinning ourselves or causing someone else to sin, just as the serpent did. Summing up then, Christadelphians believe that all desire for evil and therefore sin comes from the heart of man. However, there are a few places in the Bible that it sounds like a supernatural tempter was involved. Mostly these cases can be resolved easily without contradicting what we've said here. The others can also be resolved while sticking to the overarching principles of the Bible. We've looked then at what Christadelphians believe about sin and a supposed devil, and more importantly, why we believe those things. So if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch via the contact section of our website, staffordchristadelphians.org.uk. Until next time, God bless you and thank you for listening.